been a Buddhist nun since 1977. She graduated from UCLA and has studied cum practiced Buddhism in Asia and the West. She is also the founder and abbess of Sravasti Abbey, a Buddhist monastery in Washington State. She is a renowned author who has written several books, over 17, and I'm sure you've heard about the famous title Open Heart, Clear Mind and Taming the Mind. Many of you must have gone through the book as well. Her latest book, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice, has just come out. Still hot from the oven, it seems? Still hot from the oven, it seems?
Yes.
Okay. So Venerable has been a popular teacher and quite a regular one at our center. This time she's come after 7 years. And today she's going to speak on the theme of availability for the use of others, the joy of benefiting sentient beings. So may I now request you to please teach today?
Okay, so I always like to start with just a little bit of silent meditation, just so we could switch gears from running around all day to doing something a little bit more serious. And then I'll give the talk, and then we'll have questions and comments, maybe answers. We'll see. Okay. So
can you hear at the back? Can you hear?
The mic closer to your mouth.
No, you can hear, right? Okay. Okay, so sit up straight. And your right hand on your left. Your thumbs are touching, your back straight, and eyes lowered. And just spend a minute checking in with your body, seeing if there's tension anywhere, and if there is, releasing it. And then turn your attention to your breath, just letting the flow of your breath be normal. Don't deep breathe or force your breath in any way. So you can place your attention on your belly and watch the rise and fall of your belly as you inhale and exhale. Or you can put your attention on the upper lip and the nostrils and be aware of the sensation of the air as it passes by there. But from whichever point you choose, just simply watch, experience, observe your breath. If you get distracted by a sound or a thought, just notice that, but bring your attention home to the breath. And by letting your mind settle on one object, then the mind becomes calmer and more focused. Let's have a few minutes to do that. Before we begin the talk, let's take a minute and cultivate our motivation and think that we'll spend the evening together sharing in the Buddha Dharma, the Buddha's teachings. so that we can learn about how our mind works, learn ways to subdue disturbing states of mind and enhance constructive states of mind. And let's do this not only for our own well-being, but really being aware of how we are dependent on all of the living beings. Let's work on transforming ourselves so we can make a greater and greater contribution to the welfare of all living beings, both in the present, to society present, and also in the long term, in terms of spiritual well-being. We're going to talk about the joy of serving sentient beings. Some of you may hear the title and say, oh, I certainly hope a lot of other people take joy in serving me. But for me to serve other sentient beings, I don't know about that one. Yeah. I'll serve the people who are nice to me, who think like me, who praise me, who agree with me, who give me presents. But all those other people, the real stupid ones, who have different political or religious views, who criticize me, who steal my stuff or deceive me, I don't want to take care of them. Right? And as for everybody I don't know, I don't really have enough energy for them. Is this kind of the way you think, your usual perspective? You can be honest, we're with friends. Yeah. We aren't all great bodhisattvas roaring out there to benefit everybody we see. Yeah. The person we usually want to benefit foremost is this one, isn't it? Me. How do you say me in Hindi?
Me. Me.
Me.
Me.
Yeah. Me. Yeah? Okay. Always thinking about me first. Okay, so that attitude of me first is a big problem. Yeah? We think that attitude is our friend. That by taking care of ourselves first, by focusing on our own interest, that then we'll be happy. And then if we have some extra time, we'll help other people, but especially the people we like first. But actually, if we look closely at our own life, just looking at our own experience, we discover that this mind that thinks me, big May, yeah, actually really disturbs us, because the more we focus on the self, the more we interpret everything in the universe in terms of the self. And that makes us very, very sensitive to what other people say, what they do, because we interpret it, we think it all is about me. Okay? So you know how it is if you walk into a room and two people are talking quietly somewhere? What's your thought? They must be talking about me. Yeah, we become very sensitive, especially in our family. You go in, people are talking, they stop talking. Uh-oh, they've been talking about me. Or in our workplace, because we interpret everything in terms of me. And that makes us really, really miserable. Because believe it or not, other people have more things to think about than us. They spend most of their day thinking about themselves. But we think they spend most of their time thinking about us, because we're so important. So the more we're able to change how we look at things and see that we live in this interdependent world, and that, believe it or not, we really are not the star of the show. Yeah, we really aren't. Yeah, President Trump has a little bit of difficulty with this. Yeah, he's still hung up on being a reality TV star and thinks the whole world is about him and himself. And you can see the problems that arise from that. The paranoia, the drama. The American government is a 3-ring circus. Maybe 4 rings, 5 rings, I don't know. Okay. But this is what happens when we think everything revolves around us and everything pertains to us. Okay? We create a lot of drama. Do you create drama?
No.
Maybe a few people will acknowledge it. Most of you, I bet, think that your family members create drama. Yeah. You don't. You're balanced, even-minded. Yeah, rational, reasonable. But the people in your office and your family, they create drama. They suffer from the self-centered thought. Well, sorry to disappoint you folks. But this is something all of us suffer from. Yeah. And you can see it in so many ways. Like Renuka said, I'm flying out tonight. I can see my self-centered thoughts so well when I'm on planes. Okay. I do not like when people push me. Yeah? And they often do when you're on a plane or boarding a plane. And I like to sit in aisle seats. Yeah. So let me tell you a story. Just, an average way that the self-centered thought comes up. So several years ago, I was invited to Knoxville, Tennessee. There was a small Buddhist group. Excuse me.
Would you prefer some hot water?
No, it's fine. I'm just going to entertain you with some coughing so you don't fall asleep during the talk. So I was invited to give some teachings on a thought training practice called the 5 Forces. And the five forces talk about bodhicitta and how to act with loving kindness while you're alive and in the death process. So I spent a long weekend teaching about this. Bodhicitta, loving kindness, cherishing others, so on and so forth. And then I got on the plane to go back to Seattle where I was living. And I had booked an aisle seat, like I always do, because I don't like sitting in the middle between two 300-pound men, which I often find myself doing. So I had my aisle seat, and I got to where my seat was, and somebody was sitting in it. And I said very nicely, "Please excuse me, this is my seat." And she said, "Oh, I have a really long flight, and I was really hoping to sit on the aisle, going if I could." Yeah. So me, who had just spent a whole weekend talking about cherishing others and having compassion, said, "Well, I'm very sorry, it's my seat, I booked it." And then instantly, I realized what I had done, and I tried to backpedal and said, "Well, how about if we split it? And you can stay there now, and then halfway through the flight we'll change," and And she said, "No, just sit in your seat, I'll sit in the middle." And so there I was, after a whole weekend teaching about compassion. I need my aisle seat, and I wasn't going to give it up to anybody. Yeah. So you see this kind of thing, that we think about love and compassion, and we respect it, and we appreciate it, and we want to act with that kind of attitude. But the self-centered thought is pretty deeply ingrained, and we often slip up. What do you think? Yeah. Another way I see the self-centered thought, besides on a personal level like this, on a societal level. And, I can't help giving political things as an example, because to me, Buddhist principles apply to all of life. Okay, so I'll talk about a situation in the U.S. I don't know so much about Indian politics, a little bit, yeah. But many people in the U.S., they want to pay the minimum of taxes. Okay, they're quite willing to pay taxes to build prisons, to house criminals in. They'll vote for tax increases for prisons. But when it comes to education, they don't want to pay taxes. And the states are always trying to cut the education budget, to the extent that this last year, there were 3 or 4 states where the teachers went on strike and refused to teach because they said not only do they have low wages, but they had 20 textbooks that were outdated. They didn't have enough, materials, and so on and so forth. And this is to take care of the children. So I look at this situation, and it's so strange to me, because people don't want to pay taxes to educate kids. But if the children don't get educated, what happens to them? Yeah. If they don't have after-school activities, what do they do with their time? They get into mischief. They get into drugs. They break into people's houses. Whose houses do they break into? The houses of the people who didn't want to pay for the taxes to augment the school system, but who are willing to pay the taxes to, for law enforcement and prisons so that these children can be arrested and put in juvenile hall or tried as adults and kept in prison for decades. And I look at that situation, and to me, this is craziness. Yeah? If you spend the money helping the children at the beginning, the whole country prospers. Yeah? Everybody benefits by the children having a good education. Yeah? Nobody benefits by allowing the children to get into mischief and then having to build prisons. Yeah. And yet, people don't want to pay taxes for education. Okay? So this, I look at this situation, and again, this is the self-centered thought. Yeah? The self-centered thought saying, why should I pay taxes to educate other people's children? I'm happy to pay taxes to build prisons because people break into my house. But why should I pay taxes to educate children who are not mine? Yeah? There's actually a very good reason to pay taxes to educate children that aren't your kids. But sometimes people are so short-sighted, you know? We can't see what's good for ourselves or good for the country because we're just thinking in a very small, self-centered way. And this winds up harming everybody. So on our part, it really takes a lot of effort and mindfulness and introspective awareness to hold the value in our mind of benefiting others and to monitor our mind and make sure that as much as possible we live according to that value. Okay? Some things that make it easier to remember that value of cherishing others is the meditation we do on the kindness of others. And this is one of my favorite meditations. And if you do this meditation regularly, even if you just do it for a few minutes every day, it really changes your whole outlook on people and your whole outlook on, how you relate to people. And so that, we start thinking about how we have benefited from the efforts of others. So of course, our family, our friends, it's much easier to see how those people benefit us and to accept their kindness and want to repay their kindness. So that doesn't take much effort. Even dogs love the people who feed them. Even animals love whoever is kind to them. So it's not a particularly human trait to take care of those who are kind to us. Okay. What it takes more human intelligence is to see the kindness of strangers and who want to repay the kindness of strangers. Because so often in our society, there's just so many people around, we can't deal with them all. Especially, we took the railway last night, the train from Patankot here. And you're weaving in and out of people and trying to get this heavy suitcase on the train. And, the mind becomes totally focused on, I've got to get myself and my stuff onto that car before it starts pulling out of the track. out of the station, and your mind becomes focused on that. You forget, oh, there's all these other people around, So it's a thing where we have to slow down and really look. And here are all these other people, and I don't know what their occupations are. I don't know what their jobs are in society. But I do know that without them doing whatever their jobs are, society would not function and I would not benefit. Okay? So I rode the train, and you think, how many sentient beings did it take to build the Indian train system? It's an excellent system. How old is it? How many years old?
More than 100.
Huh?
More than 100.
Yeah, way more than 100.
180.
Yeah, maybe 150.
More than that.
Anyway,
Thanks to the Brits.
Huh?
Thanks to the Brits.
Times of the Brits. But still, how many people put energy into building that railway system and maintaining the system and running the system so that I can go from Thubten Chodron to Delhi by train instead of on foot. Yeah? When you think about it, incredible number of people. And I don't even know them. And probably I walked right by some of them at the railway station and didn't even recognize it. And even if I had, would I have thought to say thank you? When you see people working on the roads, do we ever stop and say thank you to them? Or to the linemen fixing the electricity? What about the garbage collectors? Do we ever thank the garbage collectors? I was in Tel Aviv some years back, and all the garbage collectors were on strike. You don't want to live in a big city when the garbage collectors are on strike. Yeah, they play a very important role in our society, in our sanitation and health system. Do we ever stop and thank them or show appreciation to them? Or do we just throw our garbage on the street and let them figure it out? So really looking around and seeing how our lives and everything we have, everything we do, is dependent on the efforts and kindness of others. Now somebody's going to raise their hand and say, but, those people did not do it with the motivation to treat me with kindness. They did it because they wanted to earn some money for their family. Right? That's just somebody was going to raise their hand and say that. But you know what? It doesn't matter if they did it because they needed money for their family. The bottom line is, if they don't do their work in society, we would suffer. And because they do their work in this society, we benefit. And that's the bottom line. They don't have to do it for us personally. I really don't think that the airline I'm taking tonight is going to fly that huge plane just for me. Yeah? I really don't think so. It's done for multiple people. I happen to be there. but how much I benefit because they're flying that way. Okay? So really spending some time and looking around and seeing how dependent we are on others. Especially, I think, in terms of our education and whatever skill or talent we have, whatever knowledge we have. Sometimes we get a little bit arrogant, don't we? I know this very well. My company is very lucky to have me as an employee because I do this job very well. I have this talent. I'm better than those people. You think like this sometimes? Maybe once in a while. But if you think every talent we have, every tiny bit of knowledge we have, every skill we have, were we born with it? Yeah. I imagine a number of you are IT people. Did you come out of your womb with IT info? Some of you are probably engineers or attorneys or who knows what. People have so many different skills. Did you come out of the womb with your skill and talent and knowledge? No, we came out of the womb going, yeah, feed me, yeah. And we kept our parents up for 2 or 3 years so they didn't get a sound sleep. Yeah, when you have an infant, you don't sleep through the night, do you? So you look, we came into this world completely ignorant. And yet everything we could do now came due to the kindness of people who taught us. Or even if we educated ourselves, we still read the books written by other people. We still were encouraged by teachers and parents and friends to learn. Yeah. Who we are today depends on other living beings. And when you think about it, in this way, our whole life we've been the recipient of a tremendous amount of kindness from other people. Not just our friends and our family, but also from strangers. And also from the people who harm us. Now you're going to say, the people who harm me, they aren't kind. Forget it. Anybody who harms me should go to hell. That's when we're polite. But if you look, the people who harm us, we've all experienced harm, right? Yeah. Now, I know none of you have ever harmed anybody else. I know. You're all good people. You're sweet, you're innocent, you're receptive to compassion. And it's always other people who target you unjustly, right? Yeah, it's okay, so we know that. But when we experience harm, aren't we being challenged to grow in a way that we haven't grown before? Yeah. When somebody criticizes you or treats you unfairly or harms you, they're presenting us with an opportunity to develop our own inner resources, to grow. We usually don't see the situation as an opportunity, but if we slow down and if we've spent some time reflecting on the kindness of others, then we'll see that every time we're presented with a problem, it's an opportunity to grow. And it's only these troublesome people who give us that opportunity. People who are kind to us don't give us the opportunity to grow. In fact, sometimes when people are kind to us, I know for myself, I get really lazy. It's like, okay, all these other people are so kind to me, so I don't need to clean up after myself, or I don't need to do this or that. Somebody else will do it. They're kind to me. That attitude is, ugh. You know, the world is not here to serve me. Taking other people's kindness for granted, that's not a very magnanimous attitude, is it? And so really, being able to see the kindness of others, even when we're challenged, even when we're pushed. So when we spend time reflecting on the kindness of others in this way, then it becomes much easier to automatically want to repay the kindness of others. Yeah. And when we want to repay the kindness of others, and we appreciate other living beings, whether they're friends or strangers or people we don't get along with, it doesn't matter. But whenever we have a positive attitude towards them, then our own mind is happy. Yeah. And we're inspired and we want to do things for them. Now, earlier this afternoon, Venerable Kabir was reading to me the description of the talk. And there was a line in it about remind people that being kind to others and serving them doesn't mean making ourselves their doormat. Okay, so this is very true. Buddhism isn't about being a doormat at all. Okay. But it's about how we look at the world, how we place ourselves in the world. So I want to tell you about one Catholic priest. He's written 2 books. The first one was called Tattoos on the Heart. And he worked in the barrios of Los Angeles, in an area of the city that was impoverished and with many minorities living there. And there was a lot of gangs and a lot of gang violence. And this Catholic priest lived there, and he did what he could to help all the families. And especially, like, he could see the little kids when they were young and being sweet little kids. And then, of course, because the education system didn't take care of these kids, by the time they became teenagers, they were part of gangs, and there was a lot of violence and crime and so on. And yet he's kept working there, and he even established an organization called Homeboy Incorporated. Homeboy is a term for the people in your neighborhood, but it's often used for other gang members. So he started this organization, and to be employed there, you had to be a gang member or somebody who was involved in the criminal justice system. And so he was taking these kids who were members of rival gangs and teaching them skills. Yeah, they had a bakery. He taught these kids how to bake. They had a cafe. They had, I can't remember all the different businesses they had, but a bunch of different businesses for these kids. And, I mean, kids, many of them were young adults too. They were into their 20s and 30s. And it was quite amazing what he did. And also how he tried to serve the people in the community. And someone once asked him, they said, aren't these people, especially the gang members, aren't they taking advantage of you? And he answered, no, I gave my advantage away. Yeah, I gave my advantage away. And so I kept thinking about that a lot. What did he mean, I gave my advantage away? Because it could have many, many meanings, and he probably had many meanings too. But his second book, it was called Barking to the Choir. And in it, I got a much better idea of how he thought, because he realized that he had grown up in a middle class home. Not upper class, just middle class. But just by virtue of that, he was born with advantages that these kids in the neighborhood that he was serving never had in their lives at all. Yeah. So when he was saying, I gave up my advantage, he was saying, I stopped taking for granted the opportunities that I had that other people didn't have. Yeah. He would try to relate to the people in the community, especially to the young men who were members of gangs, to relate to them with so much kindness and compassion. Even they got arrested again and again, even they didn't keep their parole. So many things would happen, but he saw them as equals. He didn't hold himself above others as having some special privilege or entitlement. Yeah. So I think that was at least one meaning of what he said. I gave away my advantage. Yeah. So he went into the community from with the perspective of, I am one of all these people. Not with the perspective of, oh, I grew up better than these people, and I am so kind that now I'm going to go help them. These poor people. That wasn't his attitude at all. Yeah. It was just helping others because we live in an interdependent society, and that's what we do. Yeah, that's what we do most of the day, is spend our time contributing to the welfare of other living beings. If we don't do that, then nothing's going to function. So it's important when you go to work in the morning, to think, I'm going to offer service to the world. Because your jobs, you may work in one small little place, but we're so interdependent that what you do influences what somebody else does, and somebody else does, and on and on and on and on. Yeah. So to have a good motivation when you go to work and think, I'm offering service to the world, and may I benefit all the clients or all the customers. Yeah. May I benefit my colleagues. May I contribute to having a pleasant atmosphere at work. Because everybody likes to work in a place where the people work harmoniously. Nobody likes to work in a company where everybody is cutthroat and just looking out for themselves. Yeah. So changing your attitude, even though you're doing the same job, it makes a huge difference in how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your life and in the karma that you create. When you go home at night, instead of opening the door and going, oh, I'm so exhausted. I want some food. Where's the food? Pause before you open the door and think, I'm going to see the people that I care about the most. Yes, I might be tired from work, but these are the people I care about the most. So I'm going to be kind to them. I'm not going to take them for granted. I'm not going to think that they're there to serve me after I've worked so hard. You know, I'm going to contribute to having a good atmosphere in my family. And for those of you who are young, okay, you know one of the best things to do to change your parent, if your parents are getting on your case a lot, one of the best things you need to do, and this is also very effective if your parents are not so sure that they like you going to Buddhist things, this works very well. Okay? Go home and take out the garbage. Yeah? It will work to change your family. Because your mother is going to go, wow, my son, 40 years I've been asking him to take out the garbage. He went to a Buddhist talk and came home and did it. Buddhism is fantastic. Yeah. My son, how much he's changed. 40 years. Yeah. How many of you have never taken out the garbage? One truthful person. I suspect there's some others too. Yeah. Go home and try doing something to help the family that nobody asked you to do. And not just one time. Yeah. Do this as your contribution to the family. And then, if you have kids, then when you ask your kids to help, they'll see the example of you helping, and they'll do it. Otherwise, if you just sit in your chair and shout to your kids, take out the garbage, yeah, they're gonna go. Okay. So there's so many small things that we can do to really change our families, our workplaces, our society. Small things we can do. I think especially saying thank you. Please and thank you. Basic manners. When you're trying to cross the street and somebody stops instead of running you down, wave to them and smile. There's so many ways to acknowledge other people's kindness to acknowledge our interdependence that really can make a big difference in people's lives. Thank people for things that are obvious. Yeah. Have you ever thanked your parents? Yeah. I know for me, it wasn't until after I had encountered the Buddhist teachings for years that it ever dawned on me to thank my parents for being my parents and for putting up with me, and for teaching me and, disciplining me, even though I hated it when they did. Yeah. But to say thank you. Thank you for getting up in the middle of the night for years to feed me when I was a baby. Yeah. Thank you for teaching me how to walk, how to talk. Thank you for making me do my homework even when I didn't want to do it. Yeah. So this is a mind training practice to open our vision, and open our hearts. And this way we really connect with other people in a very different way that changes the quality of our lives. Now, I brought this down because there are some verses from Vasubandhu, one of the great Indian Buddhist sages. He lived in the late 3rd, early 4th century. Some verses that he wrote about bodhicitta. Bodhicitta being the aspiration to attain full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings. And so I thought just to read them to you and maybe say a little bit, because I found these verses incredibly inspiring. I don't know the name of the text in English. Do you remember it? It's a text. I don't know if it's in the Tibetan canon. I have a translation from the Chinese.
It's the treatise on the sutra to generate bodhicitta.
The treatise on the sutra to generate bodhicitta. Okay, by Vasubandhu. So it's 10 great vows. So just listen. And this is a way, it's so incredibly expansive when our love and compassion really balloon, okay, really grow. This is how we will feel. So even if we don't feel this way now automatically, have a thought of aspiration. May I train my mind gradually to the point where I have this huge, expansive heart that really cares for other living beings. Therefore, in the initial generation of bodhicitta, it is great compassion which is foremost. So great compassion, the wish that others be free of all suffering and unsatisfactory conditions and its causes. It is on account of the mind of compassion that one becomes able to generate 10 ever more superior great right vows. What are those 10? They are: 1, regarding those roots of goodness, in other words, my merit, regarding those roots of goodness I have planted in previous lives and in this present body, I pray that all these roots of goodness may be bestowed upon all of the boundlessly many beings and dedicated to unsurpassed awakening. May it be that these vows of mine shall grow in each succeeding thought moment, shall be produced again in each successive lifetime, shall always be bound to my mind, shall never be forgotten, and shall be guarded and retained by dharanis. Okay? So may I have this great compassion, this bodhicitta mind that wants to become fully awakened for the benefit of others, that finds serving other beings to be the greatest possible delight in life. May I have this, cultivate this mind this life, and may I have it in all my future lives. Then 2, having already dedicated these roots of goodness to awakening, I pray that on account of these roots of goodness, no matter where I may be reborn, I shall always be able to make offerings to all Buddhas, and shall definitely never be born in a land where there is no Buddha. So in all my future lives, may I always be born where I can meet the Buddha's teachings, where I can meet real Buddhas, where I can continue to practice. 3, having already succeeded in being reborn in the lands of the Buddhas, I pray that I shall always be able to draw personally close to them, shall follow along and serve them in every way. In every way, shall remain as close to them as a shadow to its form, and shall never become distantly separated from the Buddhas, even for the briefest of moments. So having attained a very good lifetime where the Buddha's teachings exist, there are teachers, there are awakened beings, there are the Sangha, may I develop a special personal connection with them. May I serve them. May I take in the teachings and practice them. Then 4, having already succeeded in drawing personally close to the Buddhas, I pray that they will then speak dharma for my sake in accordance with whatsoever is appropriate for me. May I then straightway perfect the Bodhisattva's 5 super knowledges. So having a good rebirth, meeting the Buddhas, from my side, recognizing their qualities, serving them, learning from them, drawing close to them, may they then teach me the teachings that best suit my disposition and my interest. Okay? And then may I cultivate the 5 super knowledges. So the 5 super knowledges are special powers that are attained from very deep states of samadhi. Things like with your body being able to appear and disappear, go other places, hear things very far away, see living beings' previous lives, or see our own previous lives, see living beings passing away and being reborn according to their karma, things like this. Because if we have the great compassion, the bodhicitta, and all the good circumstances for practice, then if we have these super knowledges, we can really be of great benefit to living beings. Then 5, having already perfected the Bodhisattva's 5 super knowledges, I pray that I shall thereupon be able to reach a penetrating understanding of worldly truth, of conventional truth, together with its widespread artificial designations, that I shall also then completely comprehend, in accordance with its genuine nature, the foremost ultimate truth, and that I will gain right dharma wisdom. Okay, so then in my path, may I develop the wisdom that understands how everything in our world functions, especially how cause and effect functions. Okay, it's called conventional truths, but also may I understand ultimate truths, how things really exist. What is the deeper mode of being? Yeah, so may I really walk the path and gain the Buddha's wisdom. Then 6, having already realized the right dharma wisdom, I pray that free of any thoughts of aversion, I shall then explain it for the sake of beings, instructing them in the teachings, benefiting them, delighting them, and causing them all to develop an understanding of this. So having developed this broad understanding of how things function in the world, of the deeper mode of existence, yeah, may I then teach it to all living beings and lead them on the path. Because by gaining this wisdom themselves, then they can free themselves from ignorance, clinging attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, and all the karma that keeps us trapped in samsara. Then 7, having already become able to create an understanding of right dharma in beings, I pray that, availing myself of the spiritual power of the Buddhas, I shall be able to go to all worlds without exception, everywhere, throughout the 10 directions, making offerings to the Buddhas, listening to and accepting right dharma, and extensively drawing in beings to the dharma. Okay, so having this right understanding of the dharma, and instructing other beings, may I be able to go to all the Buddha lands in the universe and receive teachings. May I be able to make offerings to all the Buddhas. May I be able to create emanation bodies that go throughout the universe to benefit other living beings. Then 8, having already received right dharma in the abodes of the Buddhas, I pray that I shall thereupon be able to turn the wheel of the pure dharma in accordance with it. May it then be that all beings in the 10 directions who hear me proclaim the dharma, or who merely hear my name, shall then straightway succeed in abandoning all afflictions and in generating the bodhicitta. So then, in addition to manifesting in all these worlds, may I become a wheel-turning Buddha, like Shakyamuni Buddha was in our time period, in our historical area. So at a time in a world where the Dharma teachings don't exist, where people have no access to them, may I become a Buddha who teaches the Dharma, sets the wheel of Dharma in motion, so that all the living beings in different world systems can have access to these precious teachings. And then may they straightaway generate bodhicitta. Then 9, having already become able to cause all beings to generate bodhicitta, I pray that I may constantly follow along with them, protecting them, ridding them of whatever is unbeneficial, bestowing on them countless sorts of happiness, relinquishing my life and wealth for their sakes, drawing in beings and taking on the burden of right dharma. So then, having turned the wheel of dharma in the universe, spread these teachings around, may I then stick with all these living beings, friends, enemies, strangers, it doesn't matter who. May I stick with them and guide them and encourage them and nudge them and lead them along the path so that they can free themselves from samsara, and also so that they can become fully awakened Buddhists. And 10, having already become able to take on the burden of right dharma, I pray that even though I shall then practice in accordance with right dharma, my mind shall nonetheless have nothing whatsoever which it practices. May it be that in this I shall conform with the way that the bodhisattvas themselves practice right dharma, and yet have nothing whatsoever which they either practice or do not practice. That verse is a little bit harder to understand. Yeah. May I teach all these living beings the right dharma. May I practice it myself. And while I'm practicing it, may I not cling to anything. May I not grasp myself as some independent person who's practicing. May I not concretize these practices. May I see that myself as the object, the practices themselves as the actions, the sentient beings that I'm going to benefit. May I see all of these as lacking independent existence, but existing in independence upon each other, dependent arising. Okay. So in short, may I practice with the correct view. So that's just one small thing that I wanted to share with you. I was so inspired when I read this, and hope it had some meaning to you too. But it's based on the whole first part of the talk. Yeah? Because we can't go to this thing of, I'm going to be a bodhisattva and make millions of manifestations without caring for the people that are in front of our nose every day. Yeah. Sometimes we get so inspired by the bigness of great compassion that it becomes a theory that we can't live, and we've got to make it something that we live. In whatever big or small way we do it, we'll all have individual ways of doing this, but may we do it. Okay, so now we have a few minutes for questions and comments. This is your chance. Don't line up after teachings to ask your individual questions. This is your chance to ask them. Yeah.
Thank you for the talk. I'm so happy that you're here. You've been very kind. You're traveling and you're still here teaching us. So thank you. I had two questions actually. One was about, you mentioned about political situation in America. Sometimes I feel it's too polarized in America, and it's
it what?
The situation is like right or left.
Yeah, it's very polarized.
Very polarized, and it's very similar in India also. The right is like too right, and so my question was about sometimes you feel angry. There's anger. So how can you be kind when you're angry at somebody?
Okay. So one thing in terms of the political environment is to realize that people are not their ideas. So you may not like their ideas, you may not like their views, but you can still relate to them on a human level as one living being to another. Yeah? I read a very interesting book that was by a sociology professor who was way on the liberal side. And she really wanted to understand how some of the people who were conservative in the south part of the US, why they voted the way they did, why they thought the way they did, because she was looking at them and seeing them favor policies that actually harm them. Yeah, and seeing these people, support the oil companies when the oil companies were totally trashing their environment. And, so these people were far on the right, she was far on the left. And she went down there for, over a period of years and spent time and really got to know the people. And on a human level, when she just talked to them as one human being to another, and listened to why they thought the way they thought, although she didn't agree, she could understand why, from their perspective, their way of thinking made sense. Yeah. So, for example, before she couldn't understand why they supported the oil companies who were completely ruining their neighborhoods and their environment. But what she found when she went there was that the people felt very indebted to the oil companies for giving them jobs.
Batteries drain out.
Oh, okay. So when she, thought about it that way, that these people saw themselves as indebted to the big corporations for giving them jobs, then, and they were willing to overlook the bad parts of it, then it made more sense, even though she didn't agree. And she also found on a social situation, because she socialized with these people too, that when she just stepped back and listened and tried to learn, then she could get along with them. Yeah. But when we approach somebody who has different ideas with an angry mind, and we're going to tell them their ideas are wrong and they need to change, nobody likes being told they're wrong. Yeah, so if we approach people with anger and a critical mind like this, we're not helping to establish communication. Yeah, so we have to step back and I think develop a sense of curiosity. Why do people think the way they think? Why do they do what they do? And share with them on a more personal level, without arguing over ideas. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think I'll be loud enough. So my question is simply that, is it possible for one to ascend and to progress on the spiritual path without obsessing over compassion for others? I'm not trying to see in Buddhism. See, definitely compassion for others seems to be the right thing to do on your path. But if we move away from the shoulds, of what should be there in a utopian world, is it possible? Is there any scope to proceed and to progress on the spiritual path without others? As a person myself, I'm extremely hypersensitive. For me, when I spend time with others, it drains me of my energy sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I really look forward to times when I'm just by myself and I get a chance to meditate and actually get a chance to be away from others. That actually renews me and it rejuvenates me. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you, am I wrong if I want to progress spiritually, selfishly, and if I want to do it for myself and without the bodhicitta attitude, is it possible?
Okay, so your question is, can you progress spiritually without the bodhicitta? The answer is yes. And your other question is is it selfish to need to be alone and to need to be quiet sometimes?
My nature is like that. My nervous system, when I'm with people, it drains me of energy.
Yeah.
When I'm with nature or by myself, I gain a lot of energy.
Right.
So maybe it's not how it should be, but it is like that.
But I think we need to take away all these shoulds, because there isn't just one way to practice the Dharma. We all have different karma, we have different dispositions, different interests, and so all of us are going to do things slightly differently. I think all of us need some quiet time alone and some time with others. Yeah.
So if I've understood correctly, what you're saying is that it is possible to progress spiritually without the should of compassion.
I think if you say to yourself, compassion is a should, that you create obstacles for yourself. Whenever we say to ourselves, I should be this, I should feel that, I should do that, but I really don't want to. That is not something that produces growth. That doesn't produce harmony within ourselves. We have to want to do something, okay? And I think as we practice, and we all start at our own level, as we practice, then slowly, gradually, we want to do a little bit more. Okay?
Thank you very much.
So I think naturally that will come. You don't need
Don't force it.
to force it, to feel guilty, to say should or supposed to or ought to. Yeah. But just have a mind that, I want happiness and freedom from suffering, and so does everybody else.
Thank you so much.
Yeah? Mm-hmm.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inspiring talk. I have a question, and this is basically...
Could you speak a little louder?
I have a question, and this is basically regarding to the doormat feeling you were referring to.
The little
doormat
Please
feeling.
come forward and
doormat feeling. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, having compassion and being kindness to close relatives or people who are in your close circle, it comes natural, as you were saying. But when I try to work on the compassion and kindness level to those strangers or to those people who are not so close to you, it comes relatively naturally as well, but in the process, there is an energy drainage and sometimes a frustration feeling that it comes when I don't see that mirroring effect in others that perhaps I mistakenly expect. So I would like to get your views on how I could cope with that energy drainage or that mistaken expectations about my compassion towards others who are not in my close circle.
Okay. One thing His Holiness the Dalai Lama talks about is, he says, when I'm compassionate, I'm the person who benefits the most from it. We usually think that the object of our compassion, the other person, is the one who benefits from our compassion. But His Holiness says, actually, it's the opposite. It's the person who is compassionate who benefits the most, because that person's mind is happy, it's relaxed, it's open, it's peaceful, it's not judgmental. And so he says that compassion itself is its own reward. So this is another way that we need to train our mind. Because normally, I don't know about you, maybe you're kind of like me, when I do something nice for somebody, you know, it would be really nice if they said thank you. Yeah? And if they don't say thank you, they have bad manners. And it's not good to let them go on in life having bad manners and being unappreciative. They need to learn to be appreciative. So I need to tell them, for their own benefit, that they should appreciate the kindness that people like me give to them. Yeah? So, you know, it's so easy to think that way. But when we do, then we're unhappy and we're miserable. And the other person isn't going to change. If they didn't say thank you after we were kind, they're not going to say thank you after we scold them. So it's really, you know, what His Holiness said, that the giving is the giving is the reward. The giving is the payback. Okay? And to train our mind to see that. Now, having said that, okay, being compassionate does not mean that we do everything other people want us to do. Yeah? Or that we agree with everything everybody says. Because lots of times people do what is harmful to themselves. And so sometimes, you know, being compassionate to somebody means refusing to go along with their trip, even to the point that they may get really mad at us. Okay. How many of you have kids? Yeah. If you said yes to everything your child wants and did everything your child wants, would that benefit your child? No, it wouldn't. You would have, that child would grow up really to be a spoiled brat who is unable to function in society. So really being kind to your child, it doesn't mean you yell and scream, but you have to teach your child how to be okay with not getting everything they want. And that is a special kind of skill that it's important to learn yourself and to teach your kids. Okay? So lots of times, really to have compassion, you have to say, that's not going to work. Yeah, I'm not going along with that. And sometimes people may get upset with us, but we know what we're doing in the long term is what is wise. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes.
So you mentioned something about work and feeling sort of proud about what you know, etc. So how do you deal with this issue of, like you feel you're doing good work, but you're not being recognized for it, like how much you think you should be recognized. And so how do you maintain the motivation to keep sort of doing good work or benefiting others without the desire for being recognized for it?
It sure would be nice to have that promotion or that raise, wouldn't it? Yeah. Especially when you work so hard. Yeah, you get a promotion, then you have the pleasure of working 12 or 16-hour days instead of 8 hours like you used to work. Do you really want the promotion? Yeah? They say sometimes, be careful of what you want, you might get it. Yeah? And so lots of times, we might get the promotion, get the money, get the status, but it's gonna have a toll. Yeah, we're gonna have to pay a price for that. So we really need to think in our life, what really is of greatest importance? Is it the money, is it the status, or is it the peace of mind? Is it the free time that we have to spend doing other things that we enjoy and to spend with our family? So I think it's a thing of really looking closely at, what are my values? What really is important in life? Not what society tells you is important, but what in your own heart you know is important to be a happy person. Because there's a lot of rich and famous people who are miserably unhappy. Yeah. Trump is a perfect example. Yeah? Billionaire. Would you want to have his life? This guy is so unhappy. He's so unhappy that at 3 o'clock in the morning, he has to get up and tweet hatred comments to his political enemies. Is that person living a satisfying life? Would you want to have his money and that kind of mental state? Not me. Okay? So really, if you can do a good job and you feel good about what you're doing, and it's giving you the free time that you want, that's good.
I have one last question.
Okay, this will be the last question.
Thank you. It's kind of in relation to what you answered to the gentleman on Okay. Looks like I made it better. So you were saying it's okay to say no. Sometimes compassion is in saying no. I had this incident yesterday returning from work. When I was returning from work, there was a lady, she looked like she's waiting for her bus to a village with a bundle in her hand. And she asked, can I have some water? And I just nodded by habit no and went. Then I realized after I crossed the lane, maybe I do have some water. Went back to try to give her. She said, no, I want food. I said, I don't have food. She said, give me money. I said, no, I'm not giving you money. And she said, then give me your jacket. And I was fed up. I just shook my head. I made mistake in crossing the lane again with her, walked back. But I didn't feel good. What should have been my right path, I wasn't clear. But at the end of the day, it stuck in my mind for 2 hours, draining me thinking about that.
Yeah. Those situations are difficult. Yeah, last night at the train station, somebody came begging, and I was eating some biscuits, and so I gave her some. I handed her some, and she went, and then opened her palm and pointed to some money. And I said, no. And then I was going to pull the biscuits back. She didn't want them. And then she decided to take them. Okay. It sounds like the lady you encountered really had an agenda there. I think you do the best you can. And if there's something like that where things just aren't matching, at least, make prayers for her, extend good wishes. May she find the physical things that she needs, but may she also find mental satisfaction. Yeah, it's difficult.
So thank you very much. I think we've all benefited a lot from your talk, and we hope you'll come soon. So,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Okay, let's just sit quietly for a moment. I call this digestion meditation. So you can think about what we heard. Yeah. And just in response to continue with, if it had happened that you felt moved to give her something because it felt like it was something she really wanted and you had, then that would have been fine as well. But if it was some kind of strange thing, then, have good wishes for her. So let's just spend a minute or two thinking about what you heard so you can take it home with you and practice. And then let's rejoice at the goodness, the merit that we created together this evening. And think of it as a light coming from the center of our chest and radiated out to all the living beings. And as this light touches them, may it bring them internal peace. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhima, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forever. Thank you. And you're all very welcome to come and visit Sravasti Abbey. Are there brochures? There's brochures on the back. We also have a lot of material on the web, videos and audio and stuff like that. So please make use of